Well, it's pretty cold out here in North Yorkshire, but in this video I'm going to try and get this farm boy hit and miss engine to run for the first time. Well, I have been waiting for some heat shrink sleeve to turn up so I can insulate the pins on the whole sensor, but due to the snow, I think everything's got delayed and I can't wait any longer, so I've decided just to bodge it really with a bit of insulation tape. And now I need to make sure that this timing's right. So if I bring it round on the compression stroke and in fact, oops, nice and slowly, so it's just come on and it's just got over top dead centre, so I think that'll be okay. So I'll connect the spark plug up and connect a bit of fuel and we'll give it a try. Now the fuel is methanol and it really is nasty stuff, this, if you look at the label. So I'm wearing some gloves and I promise you I've never done this before. This is the first attempt. Now I've opened up the valve very slightly, the fuel intake, and we'll see if it goes. No, actually I think I need to draw a bit of fuel in, don't I? No, what's happening at the moment. I think I need to check the spark. Now quite often when I run into problems I pack it in for the day and have a look the following morning. Which is what I've done on this, and thinking about it, there are probably three reasons why this engine might not run, and the first one is fuel. Now I'm trying to run it on methanol and the compression ratio of this engine should be 4:1. Now the piston is slightly oversized, about 74th hour I think, which results in it being round about 4.6:1 compression ratio, and I sort of saw something somewhere on the internet that suggested that methanol needed a higher compression ratio than that, probably around about 8:1. So I'm just wondering whether that's not enough. So I did speak to James, or I had a bit of an email exchange with James yesterday, and he uses Coleman fuel in the main, so I've ordered some of that, so that'll take a few days for that to arrive. So hopefully we can sort of tick that off the list as not being an issue once that fuel arrives. Now the other area, compression. Now in my previous video James Chaff actually made a comment and he reckoned he heard air escaping from somewhere, and what I did was I sprayed a bit of WD-40 on the cylinder head, and I actually found loads of air escaping where the spark plug is, and it's got a brass or bronze washer on it, but I didn't want to over tighten it and I just couldn't resolve that problem, so I ended up putting an O-ring on it, an eye trial rung one just underneath, and that sealed it. So I've addressed that particular issue. However, I think there could be some other areas, so what I'm going to sort of investigate is compression with the piston stroke cylinder. So with the head off I'm going to actually try and see what the compression's like, somehow measure that, I don't know how. The valve seats, now I did use Solvo Autosol, which is a very fine paste, and I probably didn't use it enough of it, or I probably didn't spend enough time on it. But I've got some lapping paste coming, which is 1000 grit, so I'll have a go at relapping those when those arrive. or when that grit arrives. And the other area is the cylinder head seal. Now, the cylinder head seal that I got was actually, it's a BS025, and the sort of section area on it is 70 thou. Now the actual groove that it sits in is around about 62 thou, so that's only about 8 thou difference. So I'm just wondering whether 8 thou's sort of enough to get a decent sort of seal. So I've had a look around and I found another slightly larger O-ring, and that comes in at a section of 78 thou, or nearly 79 thou, and that's got an internal diameter and an outside diameter which should fit within the groove. So like I say, I've ordered that, so when that arrives I'll be able to check that out as well. So what I'm going to do is, the other bit is ignition. Now I'm getting a spark, but I think I'm going to retard it a little bit. I think it's probably firing just a little bit just after top dead centre. So I'm going to have to get it either spot on top dead centre or maybe just slightly before. So that's the plan. Okay, so to test the effectiveness of the piston and the piston ring in the cylinder, I've just bolted this piece of perspex on the top of the cylinder. So here we're at the bottom of the stroke, and if we move it to the top of stroke, you can see there it's holding pressure. So I'm pretty happy with that. So to check for leaks on the head, I thought I'd make that. And it's just a matter of putting this seal in here. And bolting the head to it. And this is attached to the my little air compressor. So we'll give it a try. So I reckon my engine compression ratio is 4.6 to 1 or thereabouts. So apparently if you multiply that by 14.696, that'll give you the PSI. So I reckon that it should produce about 67 PSI. My little compressor won't go up that far, I don't think. But we'll put a bit of air into it and see what happens. Well, straight away I can hear a bit of air there. So that's the intake valve. So the seat on the intake valve isn't great. You just feel a bit of air coming out. So that'll need to be relapped. I think the exhaust is okay. Well, there might be a little bit coming out the exhaust as well. So I've got some very fine lapping paste coming, so once that arrives I'll have a go at sorting those out. So we got up to 35 PSI, quite a bit. Well, my lapping paste's arrived from Molleroda, if that's how you pronounce it, 1000 grit, and it feels very sort of similar to Solvo Autosol in terms of grittiness. So maybe I should have gone for something a bit more coarser. But anyway, we'll see how we get on. Well, I've spent hours trying to lap this intake valve, and I think this paste here that I got, the ultrafine stuff, is probably finer than the Autosol, so I've reverted back to the Autosol. And I mean, in hindsight, I mean, it looks like really good paste. Maybe I should have got 500 grit, I don't know. But let's see what it's like now. I don't think I've fully resolved it. Coming up to 20 psi. A lot quieter than last time. So definitely an improvement. psi. So that's on 50, and you can hear the leak. Certainly not as bad as last time, so I've seen an improvement. So I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get some different type of grit, something more coarse. But I think that will be okay to get the engine running like that. I mean, it's holding back a lot of pressure. Well, I've literally spent days trying to get this inlet valve seated right, and it's been leaking like anything. And I've tried all sorts of things, different lapping paste. Yesterday, in desperation, I thought I'd make a new valve guide, so I did that. Used the old valve and relapped it, and still loss of compression. I recut the seat on the valve, relapped it, still loss of compression. And this morning, in desperation, I thought I'd put the valve in the lathe, and I'd just run some emery, some wet and dry, across the seat, and I used 600 grit and then followed it by 800 grit, and then give it a very fine lap. And currently it's on pressure here at 50 psi, and you can't hear any leak. There's a slight leak, very, very slight. You can feel it if you put your tongue to it. And I've just timed it, and if I set it up, get it to 50 psi, turn the compressor off, which is how it is at the moment, it'll lose 10 psi in round about 8 to 8.5 minutes. So I think I'm pretty well happy with that. Well, I managed to get another O-ring with a slightly bigger section, so that's a 2mm section on it. But unfortunately it was just slightly oversized in relation to the overall diameter. So what I did was, using this knife, I just cut a little section out, just a small amount, and that will now fit just under the cylinder head in the groove, and it's a very tight fit, so I'm pretty happy and confident that there'll be no leaks. Mind you, having said that, I don't think the other one leaked. Now, another problem area I've been trying to deal with is ignition, and I found that Simon's module sort of was a bit intermittent really, and I just couldn't fault diagnose it. So I sent that back to Simon because he thought he'd got a good idea in terms of what was going on. But in the meantime, I bought this mini mag one, and this is generating a spark every time. So at the moment I'm quite happy that I've got ignition right, and I've got the valves and compression right. So I think we'll put it all together again and give it a try. Okay, so the ignition's all switched on. I drew a bit of fuel in before attaching the ignition, and we'll give it a try. Nothing. Unbelievable. Okay, so I've just taken the spark plug out and it's as dry as a bone, but while it's out I thought I'd check there's a spark. And sure enough there is. Okay, so I've put the spark plug back in, opened up the intake a little bit, put my finger over and turned it, but still nothing. And now I'm just wondering whether or not the spring on the intake valve might be too strong. So if it is too strong, I'm guessing that when it hits the vacuum, then the vacuum won't be strong enough to sort of pull it in. So I'm just going to change that. Okay, so I've changed the intake spring. Give it a bit of a choke. Power's on. Just thought about it. Fired. A bit more. Couple of fires there. I think it's carburation. Open it up a bit more. No, not having it now. Well, I don't know. I thought it would be dead easy getting this little engine running. How naive I am. But initially I did have some problems with Simon's ignition module. So I sent that back to Simon, and thankfully he's found out what the problem is there. But in the meantime I'm going to use this mini mag one. And also thanks to James Chaff for providing me a lot of help and support and encouragement via email. But just why it don't work, I don't know. I've gone through obviously a lot of areas to make sure that they're working correctly. I mean, compression now is really good. as far as I can tell. I've got Coleman fuel. Ignition is good now. It's just firing every time after top dead centre, so I think just after top dead centre is correct. So is it fuel delivery? I think it must be associated with that. Now when I changed this spring on the intake valve for a weaker one, I did notice a difference, so maybe I need to try some weaker springs so I can make those over the next few days. And also I'm just wondering whether or not it needs a non-return valve on the fuel pipe, because I've read somewhere that people put those on. Not too sure why, but I think I can see in the fuel line sort of it bringing fuel in to the carburettor, and then I think I see something moving back, but I could be wrong. So what can I say? Thanks for everybody's help and support over the past 8 months it's taken me so far. No, 10 months. But hopefully I'll get this little engine running soon. But anyway, I hope you found the video of interest, and I hope to see you later.